All right, welcome back to the DC Blockchain Summit. If we can have everyone please take their seats. And want to thank our coffee sponsor, Manifold Technology, for making sure everyone is well coffeeed up for the day. Thank you. All right, and next I would like to welcome, I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker, Adam Ludwin. Adam is the CEO and the co-founder of Chain, which is a member of the Chamber and a supporter of the Chamber, and we're grateful to Adam for his support and for being with us here today. He's here from San Francisco. Chain is working with some very interesting financial institutions and have secured financing from some household names in the finance industry, including Visa, Citi, American Express, Fiserv, Nasdaq, Orange, CapitalOne, and many others. So we are honored to have him here and tell us a little bit more about the work of Chain. So thank you.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much, Perry Ann. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a privilege to be with you today. My name is Adam Ludwin. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Chain. And Chain is a blockchain infrastructure company. We sell and partner with large financial institutions, many of which Perry Ann just mentioned. Caveat, American Express is not an investor, in case there's anyone from Amex here. Visa is. However, the former CEO of American Express is on our board just to make things interesting for us. We've raised approximately $50 million from these leading institutions. And in each case, we're partnering with them to deploy blockchain networks with a focus on transforming markets. I see some familiar faces in the audience already from institutions like Nasdaq, Visa, Citi, Fiserv, CapitalOne, and many more. And I want to talk a little bit today about not specifically what we're doing with each one, but why we're working with them and why they're interested in blockchain technology. You might have also seen yesterday in the New York Times, we announced that we participated in a consortium with a group called R3, where we built a blockchain network for 40 global banks to issue and move commercial paper seamlessly over a blockchain network. So this is the type of work we do. And we are based in San Francisco, and we have a crack squad of just incredible engineers out there in Silicon Valley. They're all geniuses. I label them as geniuses just to be super clear about it. And they're solving really hard technical problems in cryptography, in distributed systems, math, consensus algorithms. And I'm going to talk about none of that today. Because in the rush to understand blockchain technology, financial services companies have actually, I think, sort of lost the forest for the trees. They've been focused, if you will, on the bark of the tree and scraping on the bark and trying to really understand, like, how does this work and what is the technical minutia of it all? And that's important, for sure. But more important is to understand that a blockchain is actually a strategy. A blockchain is a choice, a strategic choice that institutions make to reshape their market and to think about winning in their market. That's what it is. And that's why institutions are interested in it. So to dig a little deeper today into why we think of blockchain as a strategy, I want to ask and hopefully begin to answer three really fundamental questions. The first question is, what the heck is a blockchain actually for? I'm sure there's still confusion in this audience. There has to be, because sometimes there's confusion in my own office, and we're supposedly experts. So I'd like to just simplify and distill what we think and we believe a blockchain is actually for, and why they matter as a consequence of that. Second, why are institutions launching blockchains? I mean, that's another head scratcher for a lot of people. Wasn't this a technology that was supposed to come from the side and wipe out institutions? Why are institutions interested in blockchain? And why are they launching them? And finally, if you are an executive or a policymaker or someone who's thinking about this technology, what should you do? I mean, how should you react? And specifically, if you're in a leadership position at a financial institution, how should you think about this technology? So, number one, what are blockchains for? I will answer the question. I should probably go up and ask myself at the mic, but I won't do that. So, a blockchain creates a new medium for assets. That is the big idea. It enables assets to change their very nature specifically from either paper-based or ledger-based to a native digital format so that they can move seamlessly over the internet. That's what a blockchain is for, digitizing assets. And by the way, new mediums are usually very disruptive. I'm going to go stand over here. I was told once, if you switch sides, the audience pays more attention to your speech. So, new mediums are usually very, very disruptive. Take the music industry, for example. Think about what has happened as the medium of music has shifted from live to recorded to digital and now streaming. And the winners and losers in each of these phase transitions. Take publishing, the written word, from parchment to books to the web and now mobile and self-publishing, and think about the different winners and losers as the medium of publishing has changed. Or communication, the spoken word, our voice first traveling through air molecules. That's what I look like on Mondays. And then over copper wires with the telegraph, and then over switch line phone networks, and now finally over the internet with voice over IP. Again, same voice, similar user experience from cavemen to today, actually. You're just talking to someone. But the medium of your voice is changing. And the winners and losers enabling these shifts are very different. When you're in one of these columns, there's a lot of competition, but you don't really see tremendous change. When you shift from one to the other, it's very disruptive. So, money. We haven't changed the medium of money many times in history, in human history, but that's upon us now. So think about precious metals, and then the shift to government-backed paper-bearer instruments like cash, to today where we essentially use ledgers and central intermediaries to manage our cash for us. And now the topic of this conference and my presentation, blockchain networks. And while a lot of people refer to this industry as a distributed ledger, which is sort of a comfortable reference to the stage we're in today, I actually think the way to really understand this change in medium is to go back a step and think about cash. In particular, think about cash as a physical bearer token. So this is the time in the presentation when somebody sitting in the front row who thought they were not going to get picked on and thought about sitting in the back but sat in the front is going to get picked on. I'm going to go with you, Sir Charles. How are you?
Good, thanks.
This is not a magic trick. Don't worry. I have an ordinary $20 bill. Inspect the $20 bill. Just kidding. So here's $20, and we call cash a bearer token because its ownership is defined by the bearer of the token. If you hold it, you own it. And to exemplify this, I'm going to now give you this $20, Charles.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Charles now owns $20. Now, this is so familiar to us, we've forgotten how remarkable that transaction actually was. Question for the audience. How do Adam and Charles now clear, settle, and process this transaction? Already done. It's already done, right? Keep it, it's more fun. So the payment and the settlement are actually one and the same action. In other words, we've collapsed things that we think of as different steps in the financial system into one step. And that's where we're headed. Today, we send digital payment messages, and then we have a long rigmarole of clearing, processing, reconciling, and finally the value transfers, whether we're talking about credit card networks or securities. Tomorrow, we will have one step, which is to say we will put the assets on the network, we will digitize assets, and those assets will then move at the speed that today messages move, so that we can transact as simply as I transacted with Charles, but over the internet. In other words, if we have voice over IP today, you can think of this like money over IP. That's what this space is all about. And that's why this change in medium is so disruptive. How is this working? How is this working? Well, there's actually one simple idea at the heart of every technology you hear about, whether it's Bitcoin, blockchain, Ripple, Ethereum, smart contract, whatever, it all boils down to one simple idea, and that is digital transfer without copying. So think about this. Let's say you're on a network, email, and you have a PDF file, and I need to send Perry Ann a copy of my slides. So I say, all right, Sorry I didn't do that in advance, by the way. She's never seen these. She doesn't know what's coming. So I have a PDF, and I email it to Perry Ann. Well, of course, I'm not sending her the actual slides. I'm sending her a copy. That's how digital things work. If I take a photo on my iPhone and I text it to a friend of mine, my friend doesn't get the actual photo I took. They get a copy of the photo. And this is a feature. Like, this is how it should work for photos and PDFs and other types of digital media. But it's a bug with respect to money, because if I send you $1, it's very important that I don't have the dollar afterwards. And that's where a blockchain network solves a really important problem and creates digital money. Because a blockchain network says, let's put all the money on the network, let's give everyone on the network a key, and then instead of sending a file, let's simply have a key that allows us to transfer funds on the network between different parties, so that when I send money, it transfers, just like the transaction I did with Charles. And therefore, we get digital bearer tokens or digital assets. And that's the fundamental idea. You might be asking at this point, well, how do we get the assets on the network? I get how it moves. That's great. But how do you get money on a network? Well, it depends what you want. If you're willing to use a new financial instrument, like a new asset class altogether, you can use something like Bitcoin and the Bitcoin network. And the network itself will generate the currency and will not require any institutions or intermediaries to transfer or to operate the network. But if you're fundamentally interested, as we are at Chain, in digitizing the world's existing asset classes, in making US dollars and Apple stock and commercial paper and your Starbucks loyalty points more secure, more seamless, more interoperable, faster, cheaper, money over IP, then you're probably more interested in what's generally called the blockchain space. And that is, you're probably more interested in figuring out how institutions can issue assets onto a network. And in most cases, those institutions are also going to want to have a hand in operating the network, because their assets and therefore their clients' trust is embedded in that network architecture. And that's where the work Chain does with our partners really comes to focus. And it begins to answer this second question: why are institutions launching blockchain networks? Because they can digitize existing asset classes, and no one else really can. Think about it this way. I can put $1 on a network and stick that dollar in my mattress, but whoever gets it knows that it's basically an Atom mattress dollar. And that probably has a lot of counterparty risk, since no one knows who the heck I am. So institutions, however, and this is a very controversial thing to say at a blockchain conference, bring an element of trust to this technology that together creates something very powerful. And there's 3 ways to get assets on a network as an institution. Let's take money. One way, what we call native assets, is to go to a central bank and say, you connect to the network directly, you issue dollars onto a blockchain. And you're probably thinking, that's crazy. Well, consider this. Today already, central banks issue money in 3 different mediums. They create coins, they mint and print paper notes, and they create electronic money. So this is just a fourth, in other words, another medium, and one that happens to have a lot of advantages. But as a half step, what will happen is that institutions, large custodian banks, large global banks, depositories, will set up trust vehicles which take deposit of existing asset classes, and then out the back of that trust, a digital token is minted and put onto a network. Think of this a little bit like, and excuse the analogy, a casino. So you go to the casino, you bring US dollars, they give you chips, and then you play with those chips, and they circulate. And you can go up and you can go down, and other people can take those chips. Eventually, they come back to the window, and you can cash in and out. So that half step is what's happening now in the financial markets with a lot of big institutions. And finally, you can just mint directly on the network as an IOU. That's another option. One bank could mint tokens, send them to another bank, and kind of like an American Express traveler's check or different types of banknotes, look, we're the counterparty, we're taking the counterparty risk, yes, but we now have these digital assets that can circulate that are backed by our brand. So these are the different ways institutions are actually getting assets onto networks. These are all models that we are implementing at Chain with our partners, depending on the use case and the market. But let's talk about what's really going on. 5 minutes remaining, Charles. I gave you $20 for 5 more minutes. I didn't know you were the timekeeper. I was bribing the timekeeper. Can you go back to the 10-minute one?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, perfect. I only have like 5 minutes of stuff left anyway. Time flies when you're having fun, right? So what's really going on? Well, there's really 3 different psyches happening at the executive tier of large financial institutions. And one of them, candidly, is fear. You know, everyone's talking about the blockchain. Okay, go to this DC blockchain conference and figure it out and then report back, and I don't want to miss out, right? So a little too close to home, maybe, for some. But that's fine, and it's a reasonable first reaction, right? A second is something that's a little bit dangerous in my point of view, but is, I think, the prevailing view right now, which I would label as opportunistic. In other words, this blockchain thing seems interesting. We can probably streamline the stuff we already do today. We can make our back office better. We can just swap out our Oracle database for this blockchain database and save 10% because we're getting all this pressure on our margins. That's not, well, let's put it this way. That's true. That would work, and that does work. But that's not the big opportunity in my point of view. A lot of our competitors do pitch blockchain this way. We don't pitch it this way. We pitch it like this. A blockchain is a strategy. And if I hear an executive say, I think we can change market structure using a network and build a network effect that benefits us, then I'm like, I want to work with you. Because that's how we think of this technology as well. And so that's where we focus. And if you were a financial executive, I would encourage you to think about this right box. So what should you do? Well, in conclusion, consider this. This is the world today. And if you think of your institution as having a role somewhere over here, ask yourself, what's your role going to be tomorrow in a world where we're simply transferring digital value? And I think there's a few options. You can do nothing, which is, by the way, I think a fair response. I think a fair response is to say, I'll wait and see. I'm not so sure. We'll see what happens. I wouldn't begrudge that. The second thing is, you might look at your institution and say, we're not really well positioned to build and run a network. We really view ourselves as we would be like a node on the network. Maybe we can get involved in issuing assets onto the network. Maybe we can get involved in managing assets on behalf of clients on someone else's network, but we're not going to invest in building a network. And that's also, I think, a reasonable point of view, and one where you just want to understand the technology and partner. We have a lot of customers like that. And finally, if your institution already has a network effect, if your institution already has market kind of centricity in a particular area, if you already have clients who depend on you, and you're facilitating the movement of assets between different organizations, then I would strongly urge you to think about launching and operating a network of your own. And at Chain, that's what we do. We have the tools and the platform to help institutions prototype and then launch blockchain networks. That's all I've got. You keep the $20 bill. I'm Adam@chain.com or Adam Ludwin on Twitter, and I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.